by Tim Golden. ProPublica is a non-profit newsroom that investigates abuses of power. Hooked up to receive our biggest stories as good as they're published. Leer en español. When federal prosecutors walk into the 50 states courthouse in Flakes on Monday to present their opening statements against Genaro García Luna, the highest-ranking Mexican official ever tried in the United States for drug corruption, which will unveil a complex case that took years to add. But the fuller story of the government's investigation of García Luna, a former security minister who was arguably the United States' most important Mexican partner in a long and failed effort to transform his country's criminal justice system, is not a triumph of determined American law enforcement. Investigators from the Drug Enforcement Administration uncovered evidence of García Luna's secret alliance with violent drug traffickers more than 10 years ago, months before he stepped down from office in 2012. By the 2-year, I had enough to present their findings to the surface of the DEA, who urged them to press ahead to an issue. But as the investigators continued to damage their case, the next few years, federal prosecutors in Houston rejected it repeatedly as insufficient, several times, and former officials told ProPublica recently, the case stalled. Except they wanted more, said Stephen S. Whipple, who supervised the market for several years as a deputy chief and then head of the DEA office in Houston. I thought we had enough to charge the guy, but they said no, and they were the lawyers. The unit did not move forward until early 2019, after a government witness in the trial of the Mexican kingpin Joaquín Guzmán Loera, known as El Chapo, told of paying García Luna more than $6 million in cash on behalf of Guzmán's so-called Sinaloa cartel. But when that testimony, prosecutors from the Eastern District of New York, based in Iraq, began putting together the case on which they arrested García Luna in December of that year, the evidence developed by the Houston agents quickly became a central part of their case. Officials familiar with the inquiry said, García Luna has pleaded not guilty, but if he is convicted, his betrayal would have to one of the more extraordinary intelligence failures of the decadeslong U.S. battle against the drug trade in Mexico. The Eastern District prosecutors have also indicted 2 of García Luna's closest former aides, Luis Cárdenas Palomino and Ramón Pequeño García, on similar charges and will likely seek their extradition after the trial, officials said. A third former García Luna aide, Iván Reyes Arzate, who for years oversaw elite police units that worked with U.S. agents on sensitive investigations, has already pleaded guilty to U.S. corruption charges. Starting in the late 1990s, when García Luna left Mexico's civilian intelligence service to help reorganize the federal police, he spent nearly 15 years at the center of the two governments' joint efforts to build a more effective, less corrupt criminal justice system in Mexico. For 6 years, García Luna ran the Federal Investigative Agency, a police force modeled vaguely on the wire. Starting in late 2006, as President Felipe Calderón sought much wider U.S. help to fight drug mafias and transform the criminal justice system, García Luna served for years as his powerful Secretary of Public Safety. Yet even as he won public praise in addition, García Luna was the target of repeated accusations of corruption by plugging in the Mexican security apparatus. Playback of those officials said they confided their suspicions to go. Some shared what they knew privately with U.S. embassy officials. A few spoke out openly. García Luna speaks with reports of State Hillary Clinton in March 2009. Luis Acosta, AFP via Getty Images. American officials who served in Mexico City at the time described an environment perpetually clouded with both of stuff that were almost always difficult to eBay. They said they seemed to investigate the most significant allegations but rarely came to satisfying results. Former American diplomats also included that while they had access to U.S. intelligence, they had little or no information that was developed about Garcia Luna and other officials in federal law enforcement investigations. I never saw any corroborated information of involvement in drug trafficking. A former U.S. ambassador to MENU, Roberta S. Jacobson, tweeted following Garcia Luna's arrest. Yet, given Garcia Luna's central role in both the fight against organized crime and the longer-term police reform project, the due diligence done by U.S. officials who worked with him is certain to look less compelling against the incriminating information that federal prosecutors will start to reveal in their opening statements on Monday. The Eastern District prosecutors have prepared more than 60 possible witnesses and tens of thousands of pages of documentary evidence. People familiar with the case said. The star witnesses are expected to include the Mexican trafficker who first told his story to DEA agents in Houston in all, Sergio Villarreal Barragan, a hulking former police agent known as El Grande. But the case still had some legal hurdles. The most important may need the 5-year statute of limitations that covers drug and corruption crimes. The prosecutors have somewhere to circumvent this problem by charging that Garcia Luna joined the Sinaloa capos in a continuing criminal enterprise, like the more commonly used racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations, or RICO, Act. The so-called CCE statute is used to impose longer prison sentences on crime bosses, and it specifically targets drug crimes. The CCE charge allows the prosecutors to argue that Garcia Luna and his lieutenants are left for criminal actions that continued years after they stopped taking the traffickers' bribes. The strategy is untested, though, over a way to prosecute a corrupt government official after he apparently ended his criminal ties. With some officials believe it will likely be a focus of Garcia Luna's defense. Unlike the Eastern District's abortive effort to prosecute Mexico's former defense minister, General Salvador Cienfuegos Cepeda, on drug corruption charges in late 2020, the number of Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has mostly welcomed the U.S. action against Garcia Luna. Officials said his government has cooperated with the U.S. prosecutors in response to some requests for information. Cienfuegos was vigorously defended by the Mexican army, on which López Obrador has depended heavily throughout his administration. In the face of diplomatic protests, then U.S. Attorney General William P. Barr dropped the mouse and sent the general back to Mexico barely a month after he was arrested. Cienfuegos said he was innocent of any wrongdoing. Garcia Luna is closely associated with former Mexican President Felipe Calderón. However, Alfredo Estrella, AFP via Getty Images. By contrast, Garcia Luna is closely associated with Calderón, a pro-American conservative who defeated López Obrador in a bitterly contested 2006 election and remains his hated rival. The Mexican government has filed its own corruption charges against Garcia Luna and sued him in a Florida court, demanding $250 million that the authorities say he and his associates stole while he was security minister. He has denied those allegations. In Broadside, some of the many American officials who worked closely with Garcia Luna said they had cause to suspect him long before he was charged with working for Guzmán's Sinaloa cartel. One former U.S. embassy official recalled being invited by Garcia Luna to a party at what he described as the country home of his wife's family in Cuernavaca, a weekend retreat south of the capital favored by wealthy Mexicans. At one point, Garcia Luna escorted some of his American guests to an immaculate warehouse-like garage where he kept a gleaming array of restored vintage automobiles. One of them recalled, "It was impossible to estimate the collection's value at a half worth." The former official thought it might have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Perhaps as much as the home itself. "It was right in front of us," said the former official, who, like some others, insisted on anonymity to discuss still secret information about Garcia Luna's case. "If it wasn't corrupt, I was wonderful. But we didn't really needed a choice about working with him." The DEA noticed Garcia Luna early on roadways while still serving in the intelligence service. Small and Cárdenas Palomino, his longtime lieutenant, arrived in Tijuana in the mid-1990s to offer to deal with U.S. agents working against the Arellano Felix gang, drug-running brothers who had been implicated in the 1993 murder of the Roman Catholic Cardinal of Guadalajara. They gave a beautiful briefing. One former DEA agent said of the two Mexican intelligence agents, "They had an operational plan, but it does all targeted to the Arellanos. When you talked about anybody else, they didn't care." The former agent surmised that Garcia Luna might already have been around for the Sinaloa cartel. The Arellanos arrivals, Garcia Luna and Cárdenas Palomino pressed the DEA for information about the Arellanos. But the Mexicans claimed to know little about the phone, even though they were then operating from nearby Mexicali and pushing violently into Tijuana. In 1998, Garcia Luna joined a former head of the intelligence service to try to buff the notoriously corrupt Federal Preventive Police. That effort ended with the former intelligence chief accused of corruption. He was later exonerated, but Garcia Luna prospered. When Mexico's first opposition president was elected in 2000, he was named to lead the federal police, which was rebranded once more as the Federal Investigative Agency. At the AFI, as it was known by its Spanish initials, Garcia Luna impressed U.S. officials as a can-do technocrat. It had a college degree in mechanical engineering, unburdened by the nationalistic mistrust that had always clouded Mexico's collaboration with the United States in the drug fight. Members of Mexico's Federal Investigative Agency, known by its Spanish initials as the Phone, take part in an counterdrug operation in Mexico City in March 2007. Garcia Luna led the agency in the early 2000s. Daniel Aguilar, Reuters. When Garcia Luna was chosen in late 2006 to run a powerful new public safety ministry under Calderón, the U.S. Embassy fairly rejoiced in a cable to me. When Calderón turned to the George W. Bush administration for urgent help in the fight against surging violence, the two governments signed a landmark agreement, the Mérida Initiative, that would lead to a new era of cooperation and more than $3.5 billion in U.S. security aid. Within a very long time, Garcia Luna became our go-to guy because he was the most effective partner we had, said John Feely, a senior American diplomat who worked for years on the Mérida Plan's implementation. There were a lot of things that we did under the rubric of Mérida that works very successful, and many of them involved Garcia Luna. At the same time, however, the central Mérida goal of police reform ran into endless difficulties under Garcia Luna's leadership. When sensitive intelligence information was shared with Mexican police officials, even those trained and vetted by the DEA, it was leaked to the traffickers almost routinely. American-trained police officials in those units were killed one after another, apparently betrayed to the traffickers by others inside the government. Garcia Luna, Cárdenas Palomino and other top security officials refused to submit to the Windex and polygraph examinations that were meant to the vetted agents, and U.S. officials felt they do not compel them to do so. Reyes Arzate, a Garcia Luna lieutenant who want the Mexican police units that worked with U.S. agents did pass polygraph tests before he was purchased in Chicago in 2017 with leaking information to the traffickers. Two officials said. Obvious by the time Garcia Luna stepped down in stores. I have been linked to drug traffickers in several Mexican news articles and implicated publicly and privately by at least 3 prominent Mexican officials. All of his accusers, a former police official and an army general, were themselves jailed on corruption charges, which were later dropped. Then, in May, no U.S. allies in the Calderón administration helped secure the degree of headphones and the feared Mexican trafficker called El Grande. Weeks later, U.S. investigators began to question him at 44,100 Hertz in a federal prison in Texas. Sergio Villarreal Barragan, a former Mexican police agent and trafficker, is expected to be one of the star witnesses in Garcia Luna's trial. Alfredo Estrella, AFP via Getty Images. The story he told them was bracing. Several former officials said. He described Garcia Luna as having been a paid and trusted protector of both the Sinaloa cartel and the Beltran Leyva organization, a powerful gang headed by brothers who split from 256 and his Sinaloa allies in 2008. Arturo Beltran Leyva, who led the organization until he was killed in a raid by Mexican Marines in 2009. Unlike so strongly that Garcia Luna worked for him that he berated the minister after use of his brothers was hard. Villarreal said. Cárdenas Palomino and other Garcia Luna lieutenants were described as having been part of the USA as well. At one point, Villarreal told the DIA investigators, Garcia Luna met with a couple of high-level traffickers at an isolated ranch and framed them. He could no longer accept their cash. At least for a while. He was taking in so much force that he no longer had the means to launder it. Former officials familiar with the account said. Villarreal spoke under oath and found out specific information that the agents were later able to corroborate. If his accusations against Garcia Luna were true, it suggested that the entire U.S. effort to transform Mexico's police structure might have been doomed from the start. Getting a large group of DIA agents in Houston, where Villarreal was being prosecuted, began digging into the longest they conducted surveillance of Garcia Luna in Miami, where he had moved with his family to clutter up a security consulting firm and other businesses. They also discovered his complicated entanglements with a Mexican security executive, Samuel Weinberg, and his son, who were found to be channeling funds to some of Garcia Luna's enterprises. The Weinbergs have denied wrongdoing. As part of their effort to trace Garcia Luna's finances, the agents first uncovered records in case that showed millions of dollars in suspicious transfers from offshore accounts into others that Garcia Luna appeared to control in Miami, including one for a restaurant that appeared to be laundering the money through a front company. The Weinbergs had purportedly facilitated the purchase of paying $3.3 million house in Golden Beach, north of Miami, where Garcia Luna was living. But G120 was the reviewer who had with it out with a real estate agent. One former official said. In 2013, a senior agent overseeing the pad was sent to Washington to brief the DIA administrator, Michelle M. Lenhart. I did not run in her assessment of the case. One former official familiar with the meeting recalled. Get it done. The official quoted her as saying, get him charged. But while Garcia Luna recruited clients for his security firm, earned a master's degree in business administration at the University of Miami and enjoyed his new receiver, the Houston investigators got a less enthusiastic response from federal prosecutors in the Southern District of Texas. Headquartered in Houston, the prosecutors were not especially interested in a historical corruption case. 3 former officials said. and they did not think agents had put together sufficient evidence to convict a high-profile figure. Like Garcia Luna, the Southern District felt straight up that there wasn't enough information to charge quickly. Whipple, the former DEA chief in Houston, said, "We couldn't get it prosecuted." Whipple and others overseeing the case pushed the thing to press forward. But they made slow progress. The financial information was complex and complicated by the outside of obtaining records overseas. The agents interviewed former Mexican traffickers and lined up other potential witnesses. Despite the additional evidence, prosecutors at the Houston office continued to see their findings as insufficient to go after a target as formidable as Garcia Luna. Officials said. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office, Angela Dodge, declined to unlock on how it weighed the Garcia Luna matter, but said, "We consider each case based on the evidence and what can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law." Eventually, though, the DEA investigators began to lose steam. Officials said, "When you've pursued every lead you can overlook and the prosecutors say it's not small enough, things get stagnant." Whipple said, "I thought that we had checked all the boxes. But it was on the back burner until something popped. And the Chapo case finally popped. Early in Guzmán's trial in the Eastern District, a former Sinaloa lieutenant, Jesus Zambada Garcia, but that he had twice met with Garcia Luna at a Mexico City restaurant to give him cash-filled briefcases, each day with more than $3 million. That revelation and others prompted the U.S. Attorney, Richard P. Donahue, to instruct his prosecutors to begin making cases against Garcia Luna and other corrupt Mexican officials. Jesus Zambada Garcia, a former cartel lieutenant, just in another trial that he had twice met with Garcia Luna to give him cash-filled briefcases, each one with more than $3 million. Alexander Meneghini, AP. Those prosecutors and the investigators working with them soon found their offer to Houston, where one of the DEA agents and a financial crimes analyst eagerly turned over to the work they had done over the previous 7 years. Garcia Luna was secretly indicted on drug conspiracy charges by a federal grand jury in Brooklyn, and he was arrested in Dallas on Dec. 9, 2019. Doris Burke contributed research.